Here we go. Let's get into it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe.
Sunny.
And Sip and Talkers, today we are looking at a pretty massive systemic collapse happening in real time.
Hey, everyone. How's your day going?
I'm doing great, but looking around, the studio vibe is a little intense today. Did you actually lock the doors like 3 times before we sat down? I swear I heard the deadbolts clicking.
I absolutely did. Honestly, looking at today's rundown, this content feels a bit dangerous. I feel like if Winnie the Pooh saw the title of today's deep dive, he'd smash his honeypot right on the floor.
Okay, you gotta stop joking around. For one thing, Pooh is way too busy catching corrupt officials and trying to deal with a collapsing real estate market to listen to our show.
Fair point.
But more importantly, and we really need to emphasize this for everyone listening right at the top, every single thing we are discussing today comes directly from the Chinese government's own officially released public data. That is the craziest part of all of this. There's no bias here. There are no rumors, no anonymous whistleblowers. We are just playing a giant game of connect the dots using their government's own homework.
Which is exactly why we need to talk about it. We use analogies a lot on this show, and there's one I always come back to. For a plant to grow well, you need a good foundation, you need healthy soil.
Right.
But what happens if the soil itself is fundamentally broken?
Well, to really understand the internal friction happening over there right now, we basically have to establish the biological rules of growth and then apply them to a political ecosystem.
Yeah, let's lean into that gardening metaphor for a second. If you have a garden and it just keeps sprouting diseased crops year after year, you can't just keep spraying pesticides.
No, of course not.
You can't just pluck off the dead leaves and pretend the plant is fine. So, scientifically speaking, what actually happens to a plant when the soil it lives in goes completely bad?
It's actually a fascinating mechanism when you look at the agroecology of it. Soil isn't just dirt. It's not just like a physical holder to keep a plant standing upright.
Right, it's alive.
Exactly. It's a highly dynamic ecosystem made up of microbes, minerals, moisture, organic matter. When that ecosystem degrades, plants experience something called hidden hunger.
Wait, hidden hunger, meaning they look full, but they're actually starving.
Yes, exactly. If the soil's pH is too acidic or too alkaline, or if it lacks trace elements like zinc, iron, or magnesium, the plant's roots might still pull up water.
Okay.
The plant might even look green and seem like it's growing. But internally, its secondary metabolites, the things that give it actual nutritional value, they just aren't there. It is entirely empty calories.
It's like eating fast food every single day. You might look full, you might even be gaining weight, but your body is completely malnourished.
Yeah, and because of that malnourishment, you get an immune collapse. Without elements like silicon or calcium in the soil, the plant's cell walls literally become weak and thin. And healthy soil also has these things called rhizosphere microbes. You can kind of think of them as the plant's external digestive system.
Oh, like our gut microbiome, but outside the body.
Yes. And when the soil is dead and lacks organic matter, those good microbes die off. Without them, bad bacteria and pathogenic fungi just invade the plant effortlessly.
So it loses all its natural defense mechanisms.
Precisely.
Now, I want to challenge this just slightly because nature is weird. Aren't there some plants that actually do better in terrible soil? I'm thinking of like certain vineyards.
That is a really great nuance to bring up because sometimes environmental stress like planting vines in rocky, terrible soil, it actually forces the plant to trigger a defense mechanism.
Right.
It produces higher concentrations of secondary metabolites just to survive. That's why some of the highest quality wine grapes in the world are grown in soil that looks completely barren.
The struggle makes the wine taste better.
It does. But, that is the exception, not the rule. In modern agriculture, if you rely purely on artificial chemical fertilizers to mask bad soil, you end up with plants that might look okay on the outside, but are fundamentally weak.
Highly vulnerable to disease and nutritionally hollow.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean when we bring it back to reality? If we take this biological reality and apply it to their current governance, critics are making a very specific argument. The diseased crops and the weeds are the corrupt officials. and the soil is the political system itself.
Yeah. And to see just how many weeds are growing in this soil, we don't have to guess. We just have to look at the official harvest reports from their own Central Commission for Discipline inspection.
I actually have the public records right here on my desk, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Looking at these numbers, 618,000 officials punished in 2023. Then it jumps to 815,000 in 2024. And then over 1.01 million, to be exact, in 2025.
It's just wild.
As we said at the top, that is almost 2,700 people being punished every single day.
It is a staggering scale. You are essentially arresting the entire population of a medium-sized town every single month.
But wait, doesn't this massive crackdown show incredible political resolve? I mean, from an outside perspective, isn't catching the bad guys proof that their system is actually working?
Well,
if you're arresting 2,700 corrupt officials a day, you're cleaning house.
See, that is the narrative that the official reports promote, that it shows this iron will to eradicate corruption. But historical observers and critics completely deconstruct this paradox by looking at deterrence theory.
All right, break that down for me.
Think about it logically. If a system or a set of laws successfully deters crime, what should happen to the crime rate over a decade?
It should go down, the deterrent should work, and eventually you just run out of criminals to catch.
Right. But we are looking at a decade of nonstop escalating crackdowns where the numbers are only going up. Critics argue that when 1 million people are caught in a single year, that proves this is a structural disease.
It's no longer a case of a few bad apples.
Exactly. When the numbers are that high, the barrel itself is rotting the apples.
And it's not just low-level clerks either. We're not just talking about local bureaucrats taking bribes for, like, zoning permits.
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the absolute highest echelons of power. Former defense ministers like Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe, a foreign minister, Qin Gang.
Wow.
Top executives at state-owned banks and financial institutions.
Yeah.
We're talking about the people steering the ship.
So if we go back to our metaphor, the soil is toxic, but what specifically makes the soil bad in this political context?
The bad soil is the absolute centralization of power with zero external oversight. Critics point out that there is no independent judiciary. There's no free press to act as a watchdog. There are no opposition parties asking tough questions. Power is highly centralized, which means the system is essentially investigating itself.
Yeah, and absolute power without external checks is the exact toxic soil that continually breeds new corruption, no matter how aggressively you pull out the weeds.
Exactly.
It's like bailing water out of a boat with a massive hole in the bottom and then issuing a press release bragging about how many buckets of water you managed to throw overboard today. You're working hard, sure, but you refuse to fix the actual hole.
And when the political soil is breeding this much endless corruption, it inevitably poisons the economic fruits that the regime desperately relies on to keep the public happy.
Which brings us to the economy. And I really want to shift gears here and look at this from an authentic U.S. perspective.
Let's do it.
Because sitting here in the tech scene, looking at our own tech war with China, we watch our government roll out policies like the Xi-Chip-PS Act to secure our semiconductor supply chains. Even going back to Trump's tariffs, Washington has been highly focused on competing with Beijing. We are trying to out-innovate them. But lately, when we look across the Pacific, it feels like Washington is just watching them shoot themselves in the foot.
It really does. It's wild to watch.
It's like they put a high-speed train in reverse and then just slammed on the gas pedal.
No.
From our vantage point here in the U.S., what on earth is happening to their economy?
Well, to understand these driving in reverse policies, we have to look at 4 key areas where critics say they have completely dismantled their own economic momentum. Let's look at real estate first.
Which used to be the absolute engine of their GDP. I mean, it was how the average citizen built wealth.
Right. But a few years ago, the government rolled out a policy called the 3 red lines.
Oh, I remember this. From a financial mechanism standpoint, the 3 red lines were basically strict debt-to-cash and debt-to-equity ratios.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, like, a regulatory fine. If a developer crossed these red lines, banks were legally forbidden from lending them any more money. It cut off their oxygen instantly.
And here's why that was fatal. The entire Chinese real estate market was built on a pre-sale model.
Oh, right. Paying for air.
Yeah. Citizens would pay a mortgage on an apartment that hadn't even been built yet. Developers would take that cash plus massive bank loans to buy more land to start more projects. It required constant borrowing to keep the plate spinning.
So when the 3 red lines policy suddenly cut off the borrowing, The developers literally couldn't afford to finish the homes that people had already paid for.
Yes. It was an unpredictable, extreme regulatory shock that crushed massive giants like Evergrande and Country Garden almost overnight.
Just wiped them out.
Millions of people were left holding mortgages on empty concrete shells. And once the market panicked and collapsed, the government tried desperate bailouts to fix it. But by then, the trust was gone. The soil was ruined.
Which naturally leads to the tech sector. Once real estate was no longer a safe bet, we saw citizens pivoting hard into tech and private education to get ahead.
Yeah.
And we in the U.S. tech scene watched what happened next in real time. It was just mind-blowing.
The tech sector might be the most glaring example of driving in reverse. You had giants like Alibaba and Tencent hit with sudden, unpredictable crackdowns. The government even banned the entire private tutoring industry overnight.
They literally made a multi-billion-dollar industry illegal with the stroke of a pen. They forced tutoring companies to become nonprofits. Billions of dollars in equity just vanished. Sitting here in the States, it completely shattered our confidence in Chinese equities. The message to the private sector was clear. You are not safe.
Exactly. It scared away private investment, and it fundamentally changed the culture.
That cultural shift is the craziest part to me. We used to always hear about the 9926 hustle, right?
Oh, yeah. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week.
It was ruthless, but it drove insane innovation. Young people believed if they worked hard enough, they could get rich.
But now, that hustle has been replaced by record-high youth unemployment and a cultural movement known as lying flat, or tang ping.
Right, just giving up.
Because why work yourself to the bone in a system where the rules can change overnight and wipe out your entire industry? The psychological contract between the workers and the system is just broken.
Which bleeds into how the rest of the world views them. How does geopolitics and foreign direct investment fit into this reverse momentum?
That's the third area. They recently expanded their anti-espionage laws.
How does that actually work mechanically? Like, what changed?
Well, the new law makes the definitions of espionage incredibly vague. Let's say you're a U.S. consulting firm. Under normal business practices, if you want to invest in a Chinese company, you do due diligence.
Sure, you check their financials, you research their supply chain.
Exactly. But under the expanded law, gathering that standard corporate data can suddenly be classified as gathering state secrets.
Wait, so doing basic accounting research could land an American consultant in a Chinese prison for espionage?
Yes. And we saw international consulting firms actually get raided. This terrified foreign investors. Foreign direct investment plummeted. It essentially pushed global supply chains to accelerate their move away from China and into places like India, Vietnam, and Southeast Asia.
Wow. So we are restricting them from the outside with things like the HPS Act, and they are simultaneously pushing our foreign capital away from the inside with espionage laws.
It's a double whammy.
And then you have the bureaucracy itself.
The final piece of the puzzle is bureaucratic paralysis. Because power has become so intensely centralized at the very top, local officials, the people who actually execute policy on the ground, they're terrified of making a political mistake.
Because if you make a mistake, you become one of the 2,700 people arrested that day. You become a weed.
Exactly. So officials adopt a mindset of, do nothing, make no mistakes. It is a form of lying flat for bureaucrats. When local governments stop taking initiative, the entire administrative engine of the country just stalls out.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. We have over 1 million officials punished in a single year. We have a stalling economy, a collapsed real estate market, a crushed tech sector, and foreign money fleeing.
Yeah.
And all of these numbers are released by the government itself. So if this is all public record, why do they panic and censor people online who just point out these official stats? Why is connecting the dots basically illegal?
It all comes down to the concept of performance legitimacy.
Break the mechanics of that down for us.
Okay, in a traditional system like ours, a government's legitimacy comes from elections. Procedural legitimacy. We voted for you, so you have the right to govern.
Right. If we don't like the economy, we just vote them out.
Exactly. But the Chinese Communist Party doesn't have that. Furthermore, many historical observers and critics view their foundational ideology, Marxism-Leninism, as a foreign ideological transplant.
Meaning it wasn't a natural evolution of Chinese culture?
Right. Critics argue it took power by force, upending traditional Chinese culture and local governance structures. So if they don't have the ballot box, and their ideological roots are seen by some as an imported transplant, how do they justify being the absolute authority?
Through performance, they have to prove they're the best option.
Their unspoken social contract with the public has always been very simple. We will make the country rich, we will make the nation powerful, and in exchange, you let us rule without questioning our authority.
It's a trade. We deliver the GDP, you deliver the compliance.
But here is the danger of the dots connecting. If citizens are allowed to look holistically at the massive corruption data, the failing real estate market, the tech crackdowns, and the centralized power, well, they reach a terrifying conclusion for the regime.
They realize the problem isn't just a few corrupt mayors or a few greedy real estate developers who borrowed too much money.
They realize the problem is the system itself. The soil is bad. If the public narrative is allowed to shift from our system is superior and we are just fixing a few bugs to our system is fundamentally flawed and structurally incapable of fixing itself, it threatens the regime's core survival. The contract is broken.
So they have to isolate the narratives. They have to tell the public, oh, the real estate crash is just greedy developers. The tech crash is just monopolies getting too big. The million arrested officials are just bad apples. Because if you string them all together on a whiteboard,
you see the systemic failure. That is exactly why they enforce isolated narratives and prevent holistic big-picture discussions at all costs. Connecting the dots is an existential threat to a government that relies purely on performance legitimacy, especially when the performance starts to tank.
Man, this has been an absolutely fascinating look at how these systems operate under pressure. I want to make sure we're clear. This analysis isn't about bashing a nation, and it's certainly not about bashing its people.
No, not at all.
It's about objectively observing a massive systemic struggle that is playing out on the global stage using their own official data.
The goal here is to encourage critical thinking. When you see headlines about a superpower, it's so important to look past the isolated PR statements and look at the actual mechanisms at play. We have to ask the bigger questions about governance, accountability, and the long-term health of a society's foundation.
Which leaves us with a lingering question, Sip&Talkers. Think about this as you go about your day. If a government's entire strategy relies on aggressively hiding the symptoms of a disease, rather than treating the toxic soil, what happens when that soil finally runs completely out of nutrients?
That's the real question.
Can a superpower really run on pure momentum alone, or does the engine eventually seize up entirely?
History is going to answer that for us, likely sooner rather than later.
Without a doubt. Well, Sip&Talkers, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive. We want to urge all of you to hit that subscribe button to the Sip&Talk podcast so you never miss a conversation.
And while you're at it, please go give a warm, casual shout out to our good buddy, Mickey. Head over to YouTube and check out his channel, Mickey to Life. He just dropped some brand new travel vlogs that are absolutely incredible, and you do not want to miss what he's working on.
Huge shout out to Mickey. Sip&Talkers, keep asking questions, keep thinking critically, and we will catch you on the next one. Goodbye.